What's happening, everybody? It is 8 o'clock on the East Coast. That means it's time for Proper Royals Live. We got a special episode tonight. As you can see, I got some familiar faces around me. I got Steven at Leviathan Snakes joining us, Kai at Lucas Landon Royals, and Mark at 403 Fauna. If you guys have watched this channel or this show for any period of time, you've probably seen these gentlemen before. They have been, this is at least the second time for all of them, and maybe the third for all. Anyway, I'm happy to have these guys, and this is a really kind of a funny thing. I swear to God, on my collection of snakes, I swear to God, I did not know that the State of the Union address from the president was tonight, and I had some other events going on that made me think, like, what's the state of the hobby? Am I nuts right now, or are things okay? And I started reaching out to people, and I was like, wait a minute, that's a show right there. So I know these guys, but also from a hobby standpoint, they represent very different places in the hobby. So Kai's been at it for quite a long time, and volume-wise, and I don't get into a whole lot of finances with him, but Kai is producing a lot of animals and has a legitimate business going. Steven is on the cusp of that, in my opinion, and certainly has a big collection, has put a lot into it, a big facility. The investments he's made are really cutting edge, and he's gone all in on, or I say all in, maybe not to him all in, but what would be all in for me. And then Mark is also moving along. Mark, what are you up to? 30-ish snakes now? 31, did I think I hear you say one time? So Mark was in the hobby quite a while back and recently back into it. And coming up on your second or third breeding season this go around, Mark?
Second season.
Okay.
Standing at 34 right now.
Oh, 34. I shorted you 10%. All right. So I think it's a good representation of the hobby, maybe not as a whole, certainly, but across our viewing audience, certainly. And those of y'all that don't know me, I'm in the midst of my second breeding season, and I've produced exactly 2 clutches of ball pythons to date. Now, this year I'm expecting 8. And if you saw my recent video, I picked up a lot of snakes. That's not what tonight's show is about, so we won't go down that rabbit hole. But a little spoiler for the next video, when I called to follow up with the guy to coordinate and get some details together, he goes, oh, I forgot to mention, I've already been pairing these. All right. So that's that is a different topic. So, all right. So mainly Morphs says, I'm guessing the state of the hobby is great since Adam bought more than one snake this year. So that's a tongue-in-cheek comment, because my goal this year was to buy one snake, and I bought 23 in that collection. But what made me think of the topic of the show tonight was my wife and I talking, running the numbers, doing the business, saying, well, this offer and this deal makes sense to do as long as the hobby is good, and as long as we believe in it, and as long as we have the staying power. And that's where I said, well, that's a show right there. Let me bring these guys together. And so obviously I made the decision to go ahead and take that leap, and I'll talk about that through the show. But that was the genesis of the show tonight, and kind of what I wanted to bring together everybody to talk about. So if you'll have questions in the audience, let me know. We can certainly discuss those. And in a great way, these guys are not short on opinions and insight, more importantly than opinions. So we'll just let's just go as they say on ESPN. Let's just go around the horn. What are you, Steven? What are you excited about? What are you worried about? What keeps you awake at night in like a 30-second thought?
Okay, 2 things. One, I think barring anything with the Lacey Act, I think the hobby is super, super strong, only getting stronger, and that ultimately it is more accessible to more people. I think like back earlier in the hobby, pretty much if you're going to get into actually like breeding, you need to have a bunch of money. Now anybody can do it at any level. If they want to do it just a couple clutches, mix some blue-eyed Lucy's and have an amazing snake, or they want to go full on business, there's room for everybody.
I think there's accessibility. The last crash I hear about from ball python standpoint, I don't think that there was much of a YouTube community. I don't think there was much of an internet community. I think a lot of it was still on like the one forum message board or still in the magazine days. And I think that has something to do with it. So we'll catch on more on that. Kai, what say you?
Oh, I sold my collection already.
Oh, I forgot. I knew that. It was weird. I knew about that. We weren't supposed to say anything about that.
No, I think it's strong. I think there's people see the success. They see the formula now. So I think there's a lot of people coming in and investing their resources wisely. So I think it's going strong. I think it's going to continue to go strong.
Okay. Mark, where are your feelings at?
I was watching your live last week with Tony Thomas of Hardwired, and you mentioned that prior to going to sleep, you think about ball pythons, and that helps you go to sleep.
Yeah.
I'm totally in the same boat. I know Steven and Kai are in the same boat, and everyone who's watching right now is in the same boat. And as long as we have us that are excited about the industry and want to share that, we're going to be in a good spot.
Nice. I like the optimism. Like I said, clearly I'm a believer because I've committed to spending a lot of money on some animals. My conclusion from an emotional standpoint was much just like you said, Mark. There are a lot of people. Let's just talk about this for a minute. There's 27 people watching 9 minutes into a live show that I've been working on for 3 months. The channel I've been working on for well over a year. But that tells me there's excitement. That tells me there's an energy, that there's a community, and that there's activity out there. And that comment is not based on me thinking I'm big time. It's really me being new and relatively, gaining entry. Here's some other stats that were interesting to me. Brian Barczyk has 3 million followers. 3 million. Like, that's really, for me, an incomprehensible number. I don't know anything in my life that's 3 million anything that I can't really get my head around that number. So that's incredible. But then if I look at the number of snakes available on Morph Market right now, I think there's like 31,000 ball pythons on Morph Market, which sounds like a saturated number. But 31,000 ball pythons to the 3 million Barczyk followers. What do we have? Help me out here, Kai. Was it 1% we're talking there? You're the engineer. I know, like the data guy. We talk data, right? That means that for every one follower of Barczyk, if they were to buy a snake on Morph Market right now, that means 99 other people would miss out. That would be left wanting. I took a lot of solace in that. And then, there's all sorts of anecdotal experiences. I sold out my hatchlings, both locally, both on Morph Market and off of YouTube. So I'm excited that I think it can be done. Let's just jump right into the elephant in the room. What do we think is going to happen with the Lacey Act issues? And then you talked about Tony last week. Tony's opinion was mostly like, happens, doesn't happen, I don't care. And I was like, that's a new perspective. That's different. I hadn't even considered that perspective. And I'm not saying it it's a fair perspective. Like, okay, I can't go underground, but this whole thing started underground. So what do we think of the Lacey Act? What's the word on the street at the moment? What do you hear? Kai, I know you're really tied in with the fish community. What do we hear going on out there?
Who wants to go first?
I don't know.
Did you want to say something, Steven?
No, I just in general, but like, I don't want to go first.
Oh, you don't want to
Yes,
go first?
yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I kind of got the same thing. What Tony said. Like when I speak to my friends about it, they're all like, "Who cares?" You know, it's people are gonna keep their ball pythons. They're gonna sell ball pythons. You know, they'll probably just sell it in the black market or on the dark web or something like that. But so to me, like I rather do it legitimately. And if we're just talking about ball pythons, I don't think that it'll, you know, even if they pass it the way it is, I don't think it's going to affect ball pythons as much. Because if you think about it, like, even though they say like it's only going to, the whitelist will only contain dogs, cats, and farm animals, I think, you know, ultimately they're going to add some of the common species that we keep in the hobby onto that list. However, it is a little bit scary because that's just going to open the floodgates to other things down the line. So it's going to have a ripple effect. But I think even if they pass it this time, ball pythons will be safe this time. I don't know if you guys know, but PetSmart and PetGo, they joined forces. So they have their own lobbyist party, and that party, it's cool that they have it, but it's also unfortunate that their stance is really just, we don't care what laws get passed or how you pass the law, just don't affect the SKUs of the stores. And you know they sell the common stuff like boas and ball pythons, tarantulas, chameleons, neon tetras, Oscars, like all of those. They're probably going to make it to the whitelist. So that's why I'm saying, like, this time around, even if the Competes Act gets passed the way it is, it probably won't affect the ball pythons as much. But it's still, you know, something that we should try to rectify so that, you know, we don't open the floodgates or, you know, cause future issues.
Yeah, I appreciate your in-depth and nuanced approach. There's a lot of people, even some in the comments, where I just hear like a huge like binary, it passes or it doesn't. Bah. Okay, I'm not saying any opinion's invalid, and the last thing I want to do is turn this into a question on politics and party politics and that kind of crap. That is not what we come to a ball python show for. But you're exactly right. There's nuances here, and there's a difference between. I think it's great that you brought up the big box stores, because they are who has the money, and it's a double-edged sword. It's that nuance of, they're probably going to protect us this time, but what happens when we're not in their interest? What happens when they don't think that there's enough margin on a ball python to make it worth their fight? Or when, you know, what happens when the new hip snake that's mean, or when a new, you know, escaped colony is, you know, establishes itself in some place other than the Everglades? Then what happens next? So I think it's more important than just you know, railing against the government or thinking that it's not going to happen. I think it's more important to look at why it shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen because it goes against a federal versus a state level lawmaking. It affects our country on a federal level when Alaska is a different place than South Florida, and it affects a huge amount of commerce. I think it was Tony last week brought up. By the way, guys, you're welcome to make the comments that you want. You don't have to dial it back. I might not bring them up. That's just my opinion, and I don't think my opinion is more valid or more important than anybody else's. I do want to say that I believe that in music. I believe that in life. I believe that as a dad. I'm just here trying to get by. So everybody's opinion's valid. Tony was talking about the strength in the lobby of not just the big box stores, but of a company like FedEx. I don't know. I wonder what competes with FedEx's overnight business more than the live animal trade. And I say that I don't know. Does anybody have an idea of what rolls bigger with that than, I mean, what drives more money to FedEx overnight business? I don't either. It's just a point of conversation. I found it interesting to think about. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, like I have no idea.
Thank you, Phil.
When I think about like the Lacey Act, stuff like that. I agree with you, Kai. I think specifically for ball pythons, even if they're not initially on the whitelist, I think that they'll get there because I think there's enough support and they're relatively harmless. And like excluding the very, very bottom of Florida, they can't even really live outside in the United States. And even if they can, they're closer to prey items than they are than like big predators. Birds are going to eat them. There's plenty of animals that will feed on ball pythons to where they wouldn't be invasive. I think that if it does pass, worst case scenario is it passes and all reptiles, including ball pythons, and this is worst case for me, but we have friends who breed rock pythons and Burmese pythons, and I 100% think that they will be affected by it to where that they won't get on a whitelist. That these people will be limited to within their state. And I think that the market will go from like global to national down to like really, really local. And it doesn't mean that it's going to go away completely, but I think like the legitimate market will be like, who do you know in your like a centrally state, and that's going to be your market that you sell to. That's worst case scenario.
That's a good point. I think I'm way more optimistic. Like I asked myself before I made that purchase, what happens if it does happen? I could probably still sell in Florida. Probably. Okay. Versus where I lived in North Carolina, where I could legitimately go a day in my life and never see another human on a regular basis from how rural it was. So that gave me a little bit of solace as well. And I personally, I don't know if everybody knows, I have a wife, I have a 9-year-old son. I can't go the Walter White Breaking Bad model. It ain't going to happen. I'm not that guy. 20 years ago in my life, I would have been that guy. And in some ways I was that guy, not with meth, don't worry. But like, I'm not willing to do that. I've got too much to lose. I can't do that. So it's not an option for me. So I had to really think about it very, very carefully. And like I say, of course I ended up on the optimistic side because I did spend the money, but those are my thoughts. Mark, what are you hearing down on your end of the world in San Diego?
Well, California is really strict on our laws here. Like I can't get axolotls. And I remember when the glowfish first came out, I saw that on Aquarium Magazine. I was like, I want those glowfish. And I couldn't get them in California at the time. Fortunately, I can now. But what I did, one of the first things I did when I started hearing about this was I started looking up videos from other parts of other hobbies like fish and birds, and the majority of them seem not to be too concerned about it. I also thought about how come the big box stores aren't coming out about this, and it seems to be really restricted to us reptile people. So honestly, I'm a USARC member, and I haven't done the emails yet, to be honest, but I'm not too worried about it, but I am concerned since I'm just starting in this hobby and I want my future to be stable. And
yeah. I mean, we all have a flame that's been lit that we're after here, and we want it to keep going. Those of y'all that are watching, you're probably well aware of all the options out there. Mark just alluded to one, which is if you go to USARC, you don't have to be a member at all. Although I'm a champion of that, of doing so, or just contributing. You can contribute without being a member if that makes you feel better as well. But they have a link to every state's senator's email and office link in the United States. So you can let your senators know. And I agree with the cynical idea. Does the actual senator ever lay their eyes on it? Probably not. Does their pollster who tells them how different opinions are polling on a daily basis, or him or her on a daily basis, and what their constituency is saying and what's trending popular and not, they hear that many times over every day. That I am very, very confident of from a political standpoint. So that's what I would recommend doing. If you have an avenue to local officials, my local small town mayor, not the mayor of Jacksonville, but of Jacksonville Beach. I actually used to work with her. And she is in Washington, D.C. right now on a mayoral convention that's being hosted by senators. I regret that I didn't have a conversation with her because I underestimated her as a small town mayor. There's a platform. So do what you can out there so that doesn't become the big threat. Anything more on the Lacey Act? I mean, I know it's been all we've heard about the past 3-4 weeks. Anything there? We want to get to the typical market forces that we think about.
I want to say kudos to Mark for doing what you did when you first initially heard about this situation. I think that's what most people sensible would do. I myself, one of the first things I did, I asked my friend, how does the dark web work? And I'm in tech too, and he's in tech, so I'm like just poking holes at what he's explaining to me, and then he finally gave up. But no, I'm kidding. I think that donating to USARK, becoming a member, is really important. If you're just going by what I said earlier, that the big box Petco and PetSmart would fight for us and get those animals on the white list, I think that's a little bit of a selfish way of thinking about it. I'm guilty of that as well. But like I said, it just having that whitelist kind of gives, the Fish and Wildlife and animal rights activists that power to just change things at a whim, whenever they want. So I think becoming a member is probably the best thing you can do right now. And if you could donate, that's great. But I think having the numbers is really important. I don't know, maybe you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a write-off, right? Like your membership and donations, that's a write-off. So I rather put my money with USARK than give it to the government.
Yeah, if I got to pay it in taxes or give it away to a good cause, yeah, I'm going to give it away every time. Yeah, you're exactly right. This is a very good point. Those of y'all that I get a lot of messages on how do I start? How do I make this a business? You track your expenses and take them to a CPA is really all I should ever say to anybody. And that's one of those expenses that you should track and take your CPA.
Yeah, you don't need to S Corp. You don't need an LLC to write your expenses off.
That's
so
exactly
you
right.
You can put them in your taxes just like you normally would. It's just another line item that you put, your expenses, and you categorize it by. I think there's like 10 different categories. So, I mean, it could be like donation. It could be thought of as professional fee, education, anything that probably all would fit under that area. So just talk to your accountant or your CPA about it. I'm sure they can find a good place to put it, and it'll offset your income. It'll offset your taxes.
Yep. I agree wholeheartedly. That's a great point to bring up. Steven, you've been quiet. What do you got?
No, nothing. I was watching the chat. There was a question in there that I thought was interesting. So.
Oh yeah, let's come up on that a little bit later. I saw that too.
Okay.
We've touched on it before, and it's worth diving in on because it speaks to the state of the hobby. Yeah, we'll come up on that. Let me make a note of that actually. So, what do you guys see? The constant question of market saturation or oversaturation. What are the thoughts on that? How do you navigate it? If it's a concern, if it's not a concern, obviously you go wide open. What are your ins and outs on that? It's a constant question. I've seen it now for 2-3 years straight. Prices have done nothing but go up, and activities done nothing but go up. But what does that mean, though? What do we think on the saturation question?
I'm just going to kind of spitball here. So if I'm wrong, just throw tomatoes at me or something. Opinions
can be wrong.
Yeah.
Only facts are binary. Opinions are beautiful.
If my opinions are stupid, throw tomatoes at me. We'll do that one. You can have stupid opinions.
There we go.
All right. So I feel that I think that what a lot of people say when they say that the market is saturated is that they are breeding often very, very low-end animals that are like, I'm going to say like normal to normal, or maybe like an inchy to a normal. And they're producing very low-end animals. And when they post them to, let's say, Morph Market, they don't sell, or they don't sell very quickly, or they post on social media I have these animals for sale. Or even if they're high-end stuff, and it's just like, have this animal for sale. It's this powerhouse het clown, but nobody knows them. And I think that the biggest issue with it is that a lot of people who say that the market is saturated aren't very good at marketing themselves. And because they have trouble selling animals, they think that it's not, the problem isn't them, it is everybody else. And that, like, I think that it's very obvious that there is a demand. I think that there's certain places and avenues that specific animals sell better. I think Morph Market sells high-end animals way faster than low-end animals. I think that local shows are great for low-end animals. I think that there's places everywhere in between. Social media is what you put into it. That's my thoughts on it. I don't think that the market is too saturated, but I do think that it requires a lot of work in order to actually market yourself and know where to sell the animals at.
Thoughts?
I covered clowns in one of my recent videos, and because I'm in the market for a male clown, and I kind of want to have a little power behind it. So I was looking at all the clowns, and there's a ton of clowns on Morph Market. Now, going to what Steven's saying, the low end, I mean, clowns, are they really considered low end? But some of the lower end clowns with the pastel clowns and stuff like that, there's a lot of them. But I was looking for things like VPI Xanthic clown, hypo clowns, desert ghost clowns, and there's pretty much none of those on there. So I think if you focus more on the higher end, you'll have a better chance at doing well.
There is a desert ghost clown. I saw it. Maybe it's not there anymore, but I saw it a couple of days ago. So if you're looking for it, I think it does exist. Fireball is Jeremy's the one that produced it. It's going for $12,500. It's a pretty penny. But yeah, like I agree with you guys. There's certain areas that are definitely saturated. I mean, from my experience, animals between say $300 to $1,000, they don't go as quickly as animals that are like $100 because they go like really quick for me. I just sold one today. Animals that are higher end, like over $1,000, they go quick as well. So I think, you know, there's people who are coming into the hobby. You know, they might not have a ton of money to put to creating these, like, you know, Justin Kabelka type snakes, but they have some, and so they try to make animals that they can try to use animals that they can afford and make the best animals that they can make. And they typically fall probably in that range of, like, you know, $300-400 to $1,000, and that's why you see a lot of them on Morph Market. When you get to like the higher end ones, $4,000, $5,000 one, you know, they go pretty quickly because there's not that many of them. You don't see duplicates of those on Morph Market, whereas you see like quite a few of them that are, you know, like pastel pieds and pastel clowns. You know, so I think that's why some people think it's saturated, because that's where they are. Whereas some people who are, you know, like the Billy and the Justins and the, you know, they're like creating more high-end stuff, so they don't feel like it's saturated. And then there's other people who are getting rid of all the low-end stuff, the byproducts, if you want to call them. And they seem to be going pretty quickly as well. Like, I got rid of all of my $100 to $200 animals. The last one I just sold today. So,
you know, to Steven's term, spitballing, anecdotally, and I'll even talk about outside of the snake hobby. Usually when I hear things like oversaturated or can't make it here anymore or this or that, not to a person, there's always exceptions, and there are markets that have crashed. There are, you know, you can try all you want, you ain't going to sell landline telephones anymore. Like, it's just gone. That is gone. But short of something that's gone, you see the people that sort of do the work. You know, you hear from a guy like Jeremy Bott. He says he had a great weekend at Tampa Repticon. I saw the list at that show. Steve from Steve's Morphs was there. George MD was there. Those guys are some heavy hitters, but they're also the guys that do the work. And a lot of people know about them. They're on that high tier because they're busting and grinding. And there's probably a glamour to doing those shows or a sheen that looks like glamour. But as somebody who just drove from Tucson to Jacksonville across I-10 the past 4 days, it ain't pretty being out there on the road, man. It is. You're not eating well. You're not sleeping well. You got the stress of keeping animals alive. You're setting up and breaking down. You're probably going to bed wondering if your animals are safe because they're locked up behind a security guard and you don't have them anymore for the night. So, the guys that are out there and the women that are out there doing the work and putting in the work generally do better. And I mean that in any market, whenever I talk about restaurants, the first thing people say to me is, X% fail in their first year. Yeah, I know, because it's hard, because that's, if you want a free consultant advice, it's because it's hard. And the same with us. Like, we spend our lives cleaning poo and trying to convince people to buy our snake versus the next guy over. So, Snakes for the Memories was there at Tampa as well. So Jeremy's pretty direct. Like, he would tell us if it was a bum show, he would tell us it was a bum show. Man, there are 45 people here, 32 minutes in. Guys, I'm flattered. Thank you. If I'm supposed to be considering the state of the hobby, we're up to 43 reasons why I think it's pretty good right now. So thank you all. I don't take you for granted. Yeah, wherever that number is there. Stephen, that ties to, and Kai, you talking about the high-end snakes. Stephen, forgive me. Who was the guest who made the comment
earlier? It was Tyler Stansel. He asked, what drives the demand for high-end? Is it like people wanting pets, or is it other breeders, essentially?
Yeah. So the topic of like breeding for breeders, that always comes back. I've heard it pitched as a pyramid scheme. I've heard it pitched as, that's just how the market works, and everybody's looking for something else to say to move them along. So, like, is the hobby a business, or is the business a hobby? Because if we're just selling to people's passions, and I want to talk about diversification, maybe next topic as well, a little bit as well, but do we see a slowdown on, Kai, you got some pretty high-end stuff. Maybe Jeremy wants to chime in as well. What's the high-end stuff doing? Clearly, we know those are going to, 90% of them are going to breeders. I mean, is there a casual hobbyist picking up a visual double recessive right now? Rhetorically, so, I mean, in anybody's experience?
I never asked what they're going to do with the animal. I assume they're going to breed it, because a lot of the animals that I sell have hets in them. So if they weren't looking for that, breeding for double recessives or triple recessives, they probably wouldn't have bought the ones that are het for this and for that. There are times where somebody just wants to buy an animal that's high end. Maybe they just want to keep a really cool pet. I don't really have a good grasp of if the animal are only being, the high-end animals are only being purchased to breeders or what.
Interesting. I had incorrectly assumed, like, I just wrote it off as, man, those are just breeders buying it. But your answer there gives me a little pause. And then Tony, last week, I talked about, is it a high-end show or a low-end show? And that was one of the comments that elicited the strongest response from him. He was like, I think that's a dumb idea, man. Why wouldn't you take them? Whose money's greener? I'm going to take their money. If they like the snake, take it. And I'm like, that's a fair point too. And that's a guy who moves, talking about moving a whole lot of snakes and doing the work, man. That guy moves a ton of animals. So maybe I got it wrong. Maybe I'm underestimating the high-end snake market. Mark, I see you chuckling back there. What's on your mind?
I was just reading the comments about my cat over here.
Oh yeah. Cat commentary is a little strange on this channel. Kai went into some cat conversations last time. So
I will filter myself this time.
Stephen, what did you see? You've done some vending at shows, and I know that I don't want to put words in your mouth, you found a lot of comfortability in sort of the pet zone versus the high end zone?
So we only have one season, so it's not like we have a whole lot of experience under our belt. This is our second season. What we notice, again, super anecdotal because we don't have enough data for it. We sold a lot of our stuff at the show in like the pet range. I would say $500 and less. Anything from like bells, bananas, things like that. Like the really, really visually bright, eye-catching snakes that aren't necessarily super genetically powerful. That said, the stuff that sold the fastest was our higher end things, like banana clowns, stuff like they sold like that.
Really?
Like, people wanted them. Like we actually posted them on Morph Market before we went to that show. We were like, oh, here's everything just in case they sell beforehand and we don't sell them at the show. We don't want to lose out. We took them down the next day so we would still have stuff to sell because there was like 8 that sold at that first day. They're all the het clowns and banana clowns.
Huh.
So, again, not super high end, but I personally don't think that people are watching Morph Market for a female banana het clown specifically for a pet when you could go buy a snake that looks exactly the same on Morph Market for a quarter of the price.
Yeah. But that's sort of where I come back around, and Kai, you brought it up too. Like, if you're buying a snake with hets in it, I gotta think at some point you want to breed it, because otherwise, why spend the money on it? You know, I'm talking out loud. My most expensive snake I ever sold was the oddball banana pastel het clown, and it had a little paradox on it, but it was a het clown, and that went to a first time pet owner.
Quick question for you, Adam.
Yes.
It's just I don't know if this metaphor would fit or if it carries over and all that stuff. But you're like really into like music and guitars and stuff, right?
I am. Yeah.
Okay. So like, let's say that there's somebody who has been in guitar, like been in music, has been a musician for 20 years, and they finally want to take the dive and get like a Gibson Les Paul custom.
Sure.
There might be somebody who gets into the hobby of like playing guitar and has a bunch of money and wants to go get a Gibson Les Paul custom. But most of the time, I feel like that they're probably going to start off with a cheaper guitar.
Absolutely. Yes.
Like,
there's exceptions, but yes.
And I think that breeding ball pythons is kind of similar, that people usually get into the hobby not immediately thinking that they want to breed. They get in with a pet.
Yeah.
And they could go out and buy something that's $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, and they're perfectly fine. The majority of people, I think that the people who are spending $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 as a pet with no intention to breed, I think that they are outliers. I don't think that they're the norm.
I have to agree. I mean, just talking through it, like I say, I assumed even farther that it was almost a certainty that they were breeders, but there are some exceptions. And actually, I keep a real close eye on the guitar forums. I love hanging out in those places as much as Morph Market, almost as much since it's the Ball Python channel. There are the crypto bros that show up and will drop 10 grand on a 1972 Les Paul, and everybody's like, who is that? Because they all know each other. They all know who the players are. Like, nobody strolls in with 10 grand on a guitar, and then the new guy comes in. So I mean, they're out there, and for all I know, they've been playing guitar all their life and just got rich. But I don't get that feeling. I get the feeling it's the old, once you have money, it's easier to make money. Okay, I made money on crypto over here. Now I've heard these crazy vintage guitars make money. I'll buy some of those, you know. So I don't know. Maybe there's some of that with ball. I mean, we see that with some celebrity purchases in ball pythons. Yeah, like they're buying some crazy stuff that clearly, I don't think they're cleaning their racks at 6 a.m. before they go to the show, you know, or to the set. What do you guys think?
It's interesting how.
Go ahead. Mark.
I saw a meme on Instagram that was posted by a snake person, and it was at a show for Hot Wheels, and how Hot Wheels are selling for thousands of dollars. And it's really interesting how there's so many different markets out there for different things, and we're in the ball python market, and people think we're crazy for spending thousands on a snake, but people spend money and they make money off the stuff that they buy and sell.
They do, and over time, because people would say like, how many guitars do you have? Why would you spend all that money? This and that, So you get a little defensive after a while, and then you get kind of snarky. And I would tell people, I don't have a 65 Mustang in the garage. I don't have a Harley. I don't, I'm not out at the shooting range with my AK on the weekends. This is my thing that I do. And I guarantee you that one Harley, not now, but at the time, one Harley was way more than all my guitars combined. And I worked hard and came up to the amount of guitars I have. The ball python collection that I have now and stock that I'm working with has been much faster, but it's because I'm in a different stage in my life where I have a little bit more finances now. But you're right. People have always spent money on toys, hobbies, rational or irrational. People are willing to spend money. And I don't want to turn today into a conversation on NFTs. I've done shows on NFTs, but in the same way, people like shiny new bling and trinkets. And that's what NFTs are right now. And for the same reason that they love a 67 Corvette and they can show that off to their neighbors in some communities, you can show off your, what is it, a stoned ape or a distracted ape or whatever that thing is. If you got one of those, you're big time in that world. So I think there's always going to be the shiny toy component of anything. I see chefs with knives. Like I got nice kitchen knives because I got caught up in layered Japanese steel on a shun knife. I love my shun knife, but nobody else gives a damn about a shun knife. I love it, but so I think there's always that factor. And that gives me solace about the state of the hobby, so to speak. This is a little bit less about this is still about the state of the hobby. Everybody's got opinions on this. What are your favorite, like if we were to pick bulls and bears, like a stock market, what are the bulls for jeans and what are the bears? And anybody that invests in stocks knows that there's value in the bears if you can buy them at the right price. So what's a gene that's faded that you think right now makes sense to be picking up and buying because it's going to come back around?
So like genes on the rise or stuff that's currently hot right now is like at all-time highs and
I guess
and
what are you to simplify it, what are you buying?
Okay.
And of course, if you're looking to put it to work, you got to be thinking a year to 3 years out. So then what's right behind that? If you want to, what's the, what's the insider scoop on that? What are the opinions right now?
I'm going to go with lace. I love lace. We don't have it yet. I really want to get into lace and we're waiting for the right lace animal to come up. Like, I think that lace, I'll go on lace after this. I don't want to take all the time. Like, I can go on my spiel about lace.
We got to have like passionate opinions. That's what we're looking for. I think Jeremy Baud has lace for sale. I think he'll comment in the section, but
I saw that Kai is planning on making some lace het sunsets that I'm like watching. Like,
oh, a little flirtation going on. All right, I like it.
How did you know? I didn't even post any
the
pictures
live.
about my lace stuff. Did you
I
see
watched
it?
your live. Yeah, you
you saw. Oh, okay. I said that.
Yeah,
I
you said that.
that.
Yeah. That's I'm spying. Like,
I leaked it out. Oh no.
Peeking through your windows. Like,
yeah, Kai, he's gonna get one of these snakes one way or another. Just is what he's trying to tell you, man.
I think lace. So I'll go try a quick elevator pitch on lace. So
right.
One, we don't have it right now. So there's not like a bias of like, oh, we've bought into the project and we've invested a lot. I genuinely think it is a super, super strong project. So the reason why is that lace is an enhancer gene very similar to Desert Ghost or Hypo or Fire. So the difference, the thing that makes Desert Ghost so good is that it increases the brightness of like the yellows and the bright areas, but it maintains the melanin in the dark areas, just like lace. In addition to Desert Ghost, lace has pattern disruption, which I think can be really, really cool. And if you see the white lace, it's got this like popcorn at the bottom. That's why it gets its name. And it's almost like a really cool, different version of calico. But you get supercharging brights, you get really deep blacks, and you get the pattern disruption all within it. The thing that I think is the best about laced versus Desert Ghost, and I love Desert Ghost too, and want to get in like Desert Ghost like really into that too. I think they're both good because you can double them up. But is that for lace, it is an incomplete dominant morph. So with Desert Ghost, you need the homozygous form. You need 2 copies. You need if you're going to do it in a recessive project, a double visual before you get any actual visual impact from it. With lace, you can do it with 1 copy. And if you want, you can go up to the white lace version and make it even better. Lace is awesome, and it's super, super underpriced right now.
That's the kind of pitch I'm talking
I'll
about.
be honest.
All right.
I looked up lace on Morph Market, so definitely something that I'm looking at. I'm gonna throw in Stripe. I know it's kind of on the rise now because of its combination with Clown.
Sorry, we heard you cut out. What's the one you were saying? Mark, we heard you cut out for just a second. What was the gene that you said?
Genetic Stripe.
Genetic Stripe. Got it.
G-Stripe. And I know it's really hot with Clown right now. And Clown, of course, mixes with everything. So think of Justin's Genetic Stripe, Desert Ghosts, VPI Xanthic. What's going to happen when he throws in genetic Stripe in that combination? And it's just going to take it to a whole new level. So I'm going to throw Genetic Stripe in there.
All right.
And I was super glad that you had some in that collection you bought.
I have, I got I have a pair of a male and a female, and they are, that's one of the females that's already been paired. So I could get them this year. Black pastel het genetic stripe to a black pastel het genetic stripe. So 1 and 8, super black pastel genetic stripe. We'll see. But he has paired those together already. I'll call you. Kai, what do you see? Obviously, you're excited about lace as well. If you're using up some of the sunset energy on it.
Sunset energy.
Sunset energy.
Yeah, I'm with Steven on this. I think I really like lace. But just to add a little variety, I also like Trojan and Jungle Wolma. I kind of lumped those 3 together, and Mario as well, even though I don't have Mario, but I have the other 3. I kind of lumped them together because I only have like 1 or 2 animals with those genes. So for me, like if I need a male, I would probably use my Trojan because it's a male. If I needed a female, I would use my lace because she's a female. So I kind of lump them together. But it's all the same idea of what Steven just said. They're kind of like Desert Ghost like, but they're in a codom. So you have the option of seeing them in 1 degree or doubling up and seeing them in 2 degrees.
Another thing that makes me feel good about the state of the hobby is the sheer mathematics. And I can't, maybe somebody on the show or in the audience will remember, I can't remember what it's called. It's not exponential. If you do 200 times 199 times 198 times 197 times 196, like all the way, and that's how you would calculate the total number of possibilities.
Fibonacci.
It's like a Fibonacci pattern. No,
I don't actually know what that is, so you're gonna have to explain it to me, Kai.
It's better if you just Google Fibonacci. It's hard to explain.
Okay.
It's like if you start with 20, and then you do 1 times 1, then 1 times 1 times 3, then 1 times 1 times 3 times 5. It's kind of like that kind of pattern.
Stephen, it appears if you Google Fibonacci images, and Mark, jump in here. You probably are well aware of many examples, but like,
Mark's a teacher. Mark, you teach us.
the chambers on a Nautilus shell are in a Fibonacci pattern. Artichoke scales are in a Fibonacci pattern. Sunflower
Okay.
petals. So anyhow, it's a cool mathematical thing that appears in nature. There's a ton of math that appears in nature. That's not what I'm talking about, though. Basically, what I'm saying is if there's 200 genes for a roundabout number, and we explored all the mathematical potential possibilities of all the combos that could be created, the outcome number far exists the number of people on this planet and the number of people that have ever existed on this planet. So it kind of takes away the sheen of a world's first, because we should all have many worlds first, mathematically speaking. But it also tells me that there's tons of opportunity. But it gets into my question of diversification. What do you guys feel? Are you hey, I'm going to stay focused on X, Y, and Z? What's the balance between hobby and straight business? And how much do you treat it like a portfolio where you go, well, man, if I only have 2 or 3 recessive, like, to me, so somebody made a comment that they, and they did it in an encouraging way. They were concerned that I was spread too thin, given the number of snakes that I have in my collection, to be working on as many recessives as I am. And my response was sort of twofold, was, well, if I pick only 2 or 3 and they go the way of albino and ghost, I'm missing out on my investment stuff. On the other hand, if I'm chasing things that I really like versus the investment standpoint, then what does it matter? So what do you guys think on that? Where do you fall on that discussion?
Do you guys mind if I go first?
Go for it.
Okay. So I personally believe that, and actually Phil Snyder had mentioned this in the comments earlier, I personally think that specialist breeders are going to have more staying power than somebody who spreads themselves, like, is too diverse. I'm not saying like you're doing anything wrong, Adam.
No,
yeah.
Let me make some, like, I will not be offended. At worst, I'll learn something I didn't know, but I won't be offended. I'm past the point in my life of worrying about that sort of thing. And like I say, it doesn't mean I don't want to learn. It does mean you're not going to hurt my feelings, especially when I ask you the question.
Oh yeah, and no way. Like, if other people have different opinions, this is just the way that we're kind of like approaching it. So I feel that for 99% of the people in the hobby, excluding maybe like the Justin Kabolka, Always Evolving Pythons, Ozzy, Bob, people like that, that have been established and they have so many different animals. Like, I think Bob said that he produces like 2,000 animals a year. Like, it's a lot. For everybody else that doesn't produce 2,000 animals a year, right. I think that if you want to be able to have people recognize your brand and be able to easily know, like we're not really like super deep into it right now because we're just starting, but we want to get to the point where if somebody's thinking of buying a sunset, they think Leviathan Snakes. Not that there's other people who don't have like sunsets, like Kai is in the Sunset Project. There's plenty of people who are in the Sunset Project way further than we are, but that's where we want to get synonymous with. And if we had a pair of Sunsets, a pair of DG, a pair of Clown, a pair of Pied, and it's just essentially everybody, like, we're trying to do everything, and somebody wants to be like, hey, I want to get into the Exanthic project, they're not going to think of us because we don't have enough focus on it. And like, it might come up where somebody in the Exanthic combo, because we are not super heavy in that, we're only a little bit in the Exanthic project, they may get it. There may be an amazing combo. We're like, well, crap. We are literally years away from making that if we even want to. But I also think that there's always going to be combos like that, and you can't make everything. So I think pick something you want, stick to it, build a name for yourself in that specific niche, and that when it gets time for somebody else to get in the project, there's a chance they may come to you because they know you have really, really good Desert Ghost stuff or really, really good tri-stripe stuff, things like that.
So let me qualify my original comment just for a moment. it's almost mathematically not possible for me to be into too many things just by the sheer nature of the number of snakes I have. I don't have enough to be all that thinly spread from a total, like I say, from a perspective of there's over 200 genes, that it's just not going to happen for me where I'm that far spread. But let me ask you this though. So two things, one, playing devil's advocate, not that I think it'll happen, and I certainly don't think it'll happen anytime soon. What happens if, you put your long-term time and investment into being the sunset guy and it goes bust, or some of the big players go, this or that, or they find suddenly there's a genetic problem that emerges. What's that concern?
So I think this has happened.
Yeah.
Not with Sunset, but Scaleless is one. It happened with the Desert Morph, not Desert Ghost, Desert. It's happened before. And this is why it's like there is risk involved. It is an investment. There is no guarantee that anybody will make their money back. You are choosing to take your money that you've earned, whether it's from like a job, an inheritance, anything like that, your hard-earned money, and you are investing it, and you are assuming risk for the chance to make a profit later on. And you may pick the wrong thing. It may happen. And if you diversify, you might pick the right thing, but only have one pairing for it, and then all of your other ones kind of fall away. I say pick what you like, because it's not stocks. It's ball pythons aren't stocks. They mirror them a little bit. It is, people can influence it. You can work a project, find an amazing combo specifically in your niche, and make other people want to increase the demand.
That's a fair point. I would say you're right. They are different from stocks. Stocks do have a mathematical inherent value. There is a value to a corporation and the share that you own in it, and not to get too nerdy on that, but it is there is an intrinsic value in theory behind it, as long as it's an honest presentation. Now those are all different ifs. That's a good way to put it. Beast Morph says not stocks but assets.
Yep.
On the other hand, I do think that there's a lot of value in the mindset of what do they say? The only free ride in investing is diversification. You're right, though. I'll just say I, not you. I probably won't get hugely rich on a ball python morph. On the other hand, I probably won't miss or have the ups and downs.
You're not going to run into a Scaleless thing where you invest all of your money into Scaleless and then it goes bust and you lose it all.
Right. And I have very few kind of new. I don't have anything on the hip list that just came out of everybody's mouth except for 2 hets of genetic stripes. So
you have some fire, Adam. You have some awesome stuff.
No. But that's actually where I'm coming around to. I don't think I'm over diversified. I think I'm utilizing tried and true. Now, tried and true fades, and tried and true is never going to be the big skyrocket, huge morph in the sky. On the other hand, I don't know if I ever said it on this show. I love talking about it from an entrepreneurial standpoint and a managerial teaching standpoint. You know what? There's 9,000 salad dressings, but 80% of people buy ranch, and they spend the most time in the grocery store on the salad dressing aisle because they're so overwhelmed with the choices, but they buy ranch. Everybody has an opinion on Chardonnay, number 1 selling wine in the world, Chardonnay. So the tried and true is a comfortable place for me, and I think that there's a fine balance between the business of the tried and true and then a few pet projects that come with a potential expense. We just have 50 viewers, 50 at one time. That's amazing. I've never done that before on this show. Thank you all. That's incredible. I do understand how many people 50 is, but that's a lot. Wow. Thank you all. Kai, Mark, me and Steven were hijacking the show there for a minute. What are you guys' thoughts?
I want to comment on something here in the chat. High Class said that new breeders try to do too much at the start, and I'm totally in that camp. I've got like a ton of double recessive projects. And I remember watching Will Morose on one of his podcasts saying that a double recessive project will take up an entire ARS rack. And I know at this point that I'm going to have to start focusing harder on what I really want to work with and maybe sell a few off. So I just want to say that.
Yeah. So we'll talk us, I mean, it's not that complicated math, but talk us through the math of why a double recessive project needs a full ARS rack, in his opinion.
Well,
like, can you give us the pitch that he made?
You're going to have a ton of holdbacks, and so yeah, you need that rack space for all the holdbacks. And if you do double recessive to double recessive hets, you got that 1 in 16 chance. So you got to have like multiple females to breed, and it just takes up a lot of space.
So let me ask you this from a real devil's advocate and maybe even just a real capitalist driven opinion. What if instead of the 50 rack holdback, you just go buy the double visual that you're trying to produce and then hit it right there? Because that's how many holdbacks is that you don't have to worry about. And again, that's from a little bit of a point of privilege. I get it. Like, we don't, myself included, aren't going to just go out and drop $5,000 on that visual double recessive. On the other hand, if we're truly doing the math of time, holdbacks, rack space, and a full ARS rack,
it's just on Mark's point on it. I actually had this because we're working on it for notes for a video and all that stuff. It's actually like probability odds, so not necessarily like the 1 in 16 chance, because 1 in 16 for double het to double het is per egg. I just thought this was really interesting for like the video. So probability, if you have a 1 in 16 chance and you have an 8 egg clutch, the chance that one of those eggs will be the double visual with double het to double het is 40.3, and at 16 eggs it goes up to 64.4. At 24 eggs, it goes up to 78.8, and only at 32 eggs does it break the 80% mark. Essentially, it's 4 clutches of double het to double het, and you have an 87.3% chance that in those 4 clutches, you would have hit 1 double visual, and that's probability. And it's just something like kind of showing how many holdbacks you need, how long it can take if you're doing like only 1 pair, because that's 4 clutches of 8 eggs.
Right. And that's a really cool insight, because on the flip side, you could say that's 1 male and 4 females. You probably ideally would want to have 2 to 5 kind of deal. 1 doesn't go sometimes. 1, yeah. That's a whole lot more. Let me use some real good grammar here. That's a whole lot more less overwhelming than the it's just impossible to do mindset. Jeremy Bod was having some fun. He says Will holds everything back. That's why he needs it. No, the people are having fun with you on the math. But that's how you have to look at things. One of the first conversations I ever had with Kai was, well, what's your average per snake sales price? And we got talking about it. It was different than I anticipated it would be to begin with. What in the restaurant, I look at every square footage has a dollar amount. Is it worth putting a TV there if you can't sit butts in that place where the TV was going to be? What's the value per plate? All of those, there's no right answer, but you got to look at those things and see if your business model fits that or not. I love that. That was a great way of putting that. If anybody needs a recap, hit pause and go back and let it sink in for just a second, because it is valuable to think about. Both from odds can be overwhelming. On the other hand, it can be attainable with just that many as well. So where did we land on the diversify? Don't diversify? Is that where we're back to?
I think it depends on where you are. Like if you're new, it'd be great if you decide on where you want to focus your efforts, what your projects are at the very beginning. But if you're new, like most people will probably try to do like a Noah's Ark kind of deal where they're working the Orange Dream project, and then they want to have 2 animals to do the pie project, and then 2 animals to do the clown project. I think that's where a lot of people start because it's just so cool, and there's so many more, so you just want to do a little bit of everything. But yeah, I think ultimately once you get into it a little bit more, you just naturally start to focus on a few projects, 2 or 3 recessives.
Yeah.
And then you get bigger and bigger, and then you get to the point where I'm approaching this point where I have to think, do I want to allocate this group of animals to things that I want, things that pushes my projects forward, and then hold these other animals aside that are going to be like the stuff that really sells, right? Like the albinos, the bells, the pieds, because like all those other guys, the big guys, they all do the same thing, right? Like you heard Bob from Bob's Balls say that he'll just have a whole rack and a whole column of bells that produces bells, because he knows those will sell, and he knows that that's pretty much one of his employees' salary right there. Mm-hmm. He'll have another column, another set of tubs for pieds, and that's going to be like that's going to pay for all the rat food that he has to buy. So I think it really depends on where you are. Like if you're just small time hobbyist, then you can do whatever you want. You probably are not in the mindset of making thousands of dollars right off. You're just having a good time, and then you can grow a little bit, and then you kind of see that, okay, I can make a little bit of profit, or at least this hobby can start paying for itself. Then you start honing in a little bit, and then you get to the point like those big guys, and you don't have a 9-to-5 anymore. That is your job, and so that you have to have a backup to make money while still pushing some of your more interesting projects forward.
That was going to be my question. Like where does project get in the way of business? And that's a rhetorical question. There's no real answer on that. But
I mean, it would be great, like I said before, if you could have your projects that you want to push forward, like where you're interested in, merge with the business aspect, so that you're only pushing one set of projects, but you're meeting the criteria as a breeder, as a hobbyist, and also as a business person. But that doesn't always mesh up, right?
No, I know. Yeah.
So there's you have to tweak it yourself, and I think it depends on if you're in a project that everybody else is in, that you think most of the population would like and buy those animals, then those two hobbyist and breeder mindset meshes up. But if you are focused on some niche that you like but not a lot of other people like, then you're probably going to have to breed some bells and pieds on the side, just so that you have the resources, that you can make the sales and have the resources to then pull back into your niche.
Yeah. I did a video, and it's ironic now that we're talking about it, because I sold the female. I could never get her to eat anything but a mouse, and I finally asked, I gotta go. But I made a video that was titled "Make Bells to Pay the Bills," and that was sort of the mindset of that along the way. And it wasn't just to turn an animal into a commodity, but it was, like you said, it was to fund the other things that I did want to go after, that here in this room we find more exciting than bells. I still have a bell, actually. Yeah, my one pairing next year will be all the babies will either be Mystic Potion or bells. That's it. That's and awesome. That's definitely going to be one of those pay the bills. They're beautiful animals, really effective 2-gene combos. But yeah, I've got a pairing like that for next year. That's certainly going to be coming up. Sorry, I was reading some of the comments here.
Can I ask a question just for everybody, just while you're reading the comments and stuff?
Oh, please do. Yeah, fill it in.
So I feel like that it is very, very in my looks through social media and stuff, people are moving towards double recessive, triple recessive, stuff like that. Do you feel that there are any particular double recessive projects or triple recessive projects where you're like, oh, like that's one that has like a lot of power behind it? Because they're all so specific. It's not just all double recessives or all triple recessives.
It's so I was going to ask you a similar question. I find myself asking how I can revive some of these genes that seem like they're a bust. Like, let's take an albino pied right now. An albino pied male, just as complicated, just as difficult to make as a lavender clown, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can get one for, I don't know what, $1,000, $1,100, $1,200. Not cheap, but relatively cheap. Whereas that double visual clown male is going to run you $4 to $5 right now. So my thought was kind of like, how for the same effort can I get people, or what would I put into, what would be just this incredible gene that I could get at a relatively good price, or a an incomplete dominant gene to put back into an albino pied that would make it a really great investment, because you can get them relatively inexpensive. I see the same with Ghost right now. Ghost is a relatively inexpensive recessive gene that clearly is powerful and special. What's not been done with it so to answer your question, Stephen, Ghost and albino seem to be at the bottom of the ladder right now in my experience, or in what I see. But I can't quantify why. Probably because albino was one of the first recessive genes isolated. It's been around the longest. I hear that pieds at the bottom and the pieds played out. Man, pieds are awesome. Everybody's still doing stuff with pieds. It's still like the first like double recessive you see that gets paired with any other new recessive that comes up, and if it's not the first, it's the second kind of deal. So I still am hot on pied. Clowns are everywhere, but man, they're hot. Everybody's loving clowns. I love clowns. They're cool. They just look visually different. You almost wouldn't know they were ball pythons if you didn't know that they were ball pythons, from the coloration and the rest of the species. And those are the things that I like. Like, those are the old tried and true ones. So I actually am not going to work any. I've got a het albino thing, combo. I'm not going to work that at all. And I don't want to work it because I have candy, and I don't want things to get mixed into Candino. I want to keep the candy for me. But that was the thought that I had from a business standpoint, was like, how can I rejuvenate, albino pied for me? Or is that the first two of the three recessive thing I want to go about? If I took the mindset of, well, why don't you just go buy the animals and make them instead of building the whole rack? Maybe if I was after a triple visual, those would be the ones to invest into, because the triples are still a fortune. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have that kind of money to throw around, so it doesn't really matter. But I would like to down the road, when saying, all right, in a year, I'm going to allocate 5,000 or 10,000 of revenue to purchases and investments. What would I want to go after? And that's the kind of thing I was thinking about. Like, what's the value? What's the bear right now that could become the bull later, that's at a good price, or buying the dip, so to speak?
I had some thoughts on what are some double visuals that people aren't really working with that would go well with the double visuals that they are working with. Let's take example, Clown Desert Ghost. Everybody seems to be working on that. What double visual would go good with that? And maybe that's something I could focus on. So I'm working on genetic stripe VPI xanthics. So maybe if I could focus on that, people are working on other stuff, and there'll be a market for what I produce to eventually go for those triple and quads. I think about corn snakes and all the crazy combos that they have, and maybe in 10, 15, 20 years, I start seeing crazy combos with ball pythons, and maybe there's a market for going for some of the lower end double recessives.
I think so. And I think the longevity I mean, because really the history of, and I'm sure it goes longer than this, like, don't crucify me here, but like the history of the ball python hobby as we know it, not just owning a ball python, but the hobby of creating and these conversations that are being had on a widespread scale is certainly what, at most 25 years old, and probably really only 20 years old. I mean, we're still mathematically, scientifically, we have to just be scratching the surface. So yeah, Mark, what if, the new proper royal recessive gets proved out in 5 years? What can we mix that with, or how do we work that in, and what'll be ready there for it? And that's still kind of why I love the tried and true stuff. I put a lot of faith in what Jeremy Bott has to say. Obviously, he ain't getting away from Pides anytime soon. He's paying a lot of bills with Pides from his comments there. So anyhow, good food for thought. Hey, before I forget about it, I got a busy week and there's 53 of y'all, so it's no time to let slip away to tell. On Sunday, I'll be on Warfle's Morphs channel. Jeremy Warfle is in the audience Sunday night on the 6th on his podcast. If you haven't checked out his channel, please do. Warfle's Morphs. Then on Tuesday night, Chris Shelley will be my guest. We have a little business endeavor that we've cooked up and wanted to share with everybody. And obviously, he's got a lot of snakes and knows what's going on. Pretty good player. And so we'll talk some of his collection and our business endeavors that we're cooking up. And then on Wednesday, so Sunday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. On Wednesday, I'll be on Gershon's show, GP Snakes. If y'all haven't checked him out, he's been really, really, really good to a lot of us in the hobby. Gershon is a great dude, and he's been at it a long time. Jeremy is a great guy as well, a little bit newer on the scene. And Chris, I don't know all that well, but I am looking forward to getting to know him, especially since, like I say, we're doing a little business together. So that's what I got coming up this week. So Sunday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, Warfle's Morphs, Chris Shelley on my show, and GP Snakes with Gershon. So thank you all for the help and for having me on your shows. I think you're all in the audience as well. Oh yeah, you know what? Let's just do a Jeremy night. That's what we'll do. All the Jeremys all at once. It'll just be I'll wear 3 T-shirts and just whip them off in order, and they'll all be Jeremy. You know what, Jeremy? We should host it from your place when I'm down there. I'll be down in April to pick up some snakes and check things out. That would be funny to do. Well, how do we want to give me some final thoughts on the not final thoughts as in we're wrapping up, but give me some thoughts on everything we talked about, the state of the hobby. What do we watch out for? What do we need to wrap this up with tonight? What are our thoughts? Mark, you're up. You're on the spot.
Okay. One of the things I want to do with my YouTube is to just promote the hobby. And I think every one of us should in some way promote the hobby, whether that's posting your photos on Instagram, whether you're YouTube, whether you're sharing a snake with someone who's never held a snake before. So I think for us, we must promote the hobby and build it.
I'm so glad you said that. Guys, if you didn't know why I think so highly of Mark, it's because of thoughts like that. There's not just a myopic capitalist endeavor, and it is helpful. That mindset is helpful to those capitalistic endeavors, but it's also important. The more normalized our hobby gets, the better it is for all of us, whether we want to sell or whether we just want to own our animals in peace and not worry about the Lacey Act or anything else. Thank you. You're exactly right, Mark. I agree with you, and thank you for putting that out there. Kai, what are your final thoughts?
Final thoughts on the state of this hobby. I mean, like I said earlier, I think it's still strong. I think we have to pour our resources to organizations that can, do the things that they need to do to, fix this legislation issue that's going on and let them deal with it. Just help them by, signing up with memberships and donating. Again, just giving them the resources to help us in this hobby. As far as ball pythons go, like I think this hobby, ball pythons specifically, is relatively safe, no matter what. So just keep rocking on, I guess.
Steven?
I think that the hobby is super strong. I think that the community is super positive, and genuinely my favorite hobby I've ever gotten into in my entire life. Like, it's just, and I think that there's a lot of people who see that, and a lot of people who come into it now and they just really, really like it. I mean, how many people are in that? 52 people. We're all just hanging out. We're all friends. Like,
yeah, we're just being geeks about genetics. Like,
I couldn't do this when I played Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, trust me, you can't get 52 guitarists on one stage. It ain't going to sound good. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, the hobby has shifted. The community, the mindset has shifted from, 5 years ago when it was, I don't know the right word is, but I guess toxic, a little toxic before, where everybody's hating on everybody else and they all thought the only way to get up is to knock other people down. Now you see the opposite. Everybody just keep uplifting each other, helping each other out.
I agree. From my thoughts to wrap up are, in the short time I've been here, I've been astounded by just what you're talking about, Kai, the support. Steven talked about it from a marketing accessibility point earlier. You can get in and make a difference, and you all might actually go, how would I make a difference? I don't know. You don't have to do a show. You don't have to have a channel. You don't have to have any of that. But when there's joy that you're bringing to people, when the excitement of them getting a snake or a customer that bought an animal from me well over a year ago, not well over, half a year ago, and they're just still ecstatic about it or giving me updates on how it's doing, and they're looking to buy their next round of animals. It's just cool. It's neat to be able to have that immediate effect. And I think this platform, whether it's mine or YouTube in general, allowing me to connect with people has been a real, real blessing in my life in a time that was becoming really dark. Restaurants in the pandemic, I know everybody had a tough go in the pandemic, so I don't think mine was any worse. But for me personally, I had a pretty rough go. And that was right at the same time that ball pythons and this community entered my life. So I want it to be healthy, and I agree. We have to promote it. We have to protect it. You might not realize, those of y'all that don't realize, and this isn't a shaming statement, those of y'all that don't realize, USARC is a lobbyist group, an effective lobbyist group for your interest. It's amazing. There's a lot of, I don't know that the baseball card hobby has a lobbyist group or the Pokemon or whatever. I don't know. But it's neat to know that we are important enough that there's an actual legal expertise organized lobby for us. And that's USARC. For the price of far less than one animal, you can support USARC. And there's many vendors that will let you round up or add on to your order or whatever it might be. So please support them. Please keep this going. I don't think we could be as positive and supportive openly and have these places to hang out if we were all underground. We would be reduced back down to us and the animals and a cutthroat, weird underground industry. I don't want that to be the case. Selfishly, I don't want it to be the case. So do what you can to take care of the hobby. Do what you can to preserve it. Stay strong. And I'm blown away. I think we got up to 55 viewers at one point. I'm absolutely dumbfounded. Steven, it was not that long ago. I was pitching this idea to you. And I'm going to get this going.
I was wrong. I should have done it.
No, you weren't wrong, man. We're each on our own journey, man. You've done super cool things. You built a whole building full of snakes in the meantime instead, man. It was the right point in the right place in my life. And like I say, I kind of needed it. This is my new personal interaction when I'm not, like I say, I gave up active restaurant duty. And this has been a really, really big blessing for me mentally. And I'm just invigorated, man. The business end of it excites me like crazy. So I want to tell everybody, thank you. Check out the show next week. I got Chris Shelley on B&S. Forgive me, Chris. Is it B&S Pythons or B&S Constrictors? Chris will be on next week. B&S Reptilia. My apologies, brother. B&S Reptilia will be the guest next week. I'll see Jeremy Warfel and I'll see Gershon this week as well. And I'll have some new videos coming out. And I'm going to go pick up 23 snakes on Saturday. If anybody's bored and wants to hang out in Orlando area, we'll, I'm going to need a little hand. So, gentlemen, Stephen, Kai, Mark, thank you all for being here. You all have been a huge support to me. You've all been multiple guests on my show. You're part of building that 55 number that we hit tonight. I don't take you for granted. Thank you all very, very much. I'll see you next time, and I'll leave it there. Cheers, everybody. Thanks to the audience tonight. Thank you all.
Bye, guys.
See you guys.